Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family.
I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
And we are back for another episode of Box Office Bingers. Matt, we have weathered the storm.
Yes, we have.
And we are back here. We had to we take a week off, unfortunately due to Hurricane Milton, which passed through Central Florida and West Tampa area, pretty much all across, pretty much just rode along I-4 on its way up. Yeah, it really did. Thankfully, we're okay. I'm okay. Matt, you're here. Matt, the storm didn't blow you away.
No, I'm still good. I'm still here. Yeah, and I hope all who is listening is also okay as well. It was an interesting week, and for those who listened to last week's episode, we said we were going to review Megalopolis, and hopefully we're going to have a guest on, but Hurricane Milton. We lied. We were liars. Hurricane Milton had other plans for that, so now we are making a pivot to fit our schedules. And now we're going to be reviewing our foreign film of the month of a new film that just came out on Netflix called The Platform 2. Now, Ernesto, you brought to my attention, and I knew we had to review this movie. This was very, very early in the podcast years. The original Platform came out on Netflix in 2019. And what episode you said that was?
Oh, we reviewed that on episode 21.
Wow. And we are now recording episode 236.
It's all full circle.
It really is. It's kind of crazy to see that, a movie that we had reviewed a long time ago. And we're approaching on 5 years now doing this podcast. And to see now a sequel to come out of this many, many years later, it's like, oh, we actually talked about this movie. And it only felt natural that we would review the second one as well. And you said we went back and listened to that episode, at least our review on that. How did that sound?
I mean, it was just we sound like babies. Like it actually doesn't even really sound like us. And it's interesting to see the evolution of where we started to where we were now, because the formatting of what we do is completely different. And just the whole flow of conversation, I was like, when did we start the review? When's the timestamp? We didn't even do that back then.
No, but if I remember correctly, we kind of favored the movie, right? Were we?
Yeah, actually, at first when I was originally gonna watch it, I was like, man, I don't remember if we actually liked it. I was like, I don't think I liked this movie. I don't remember if I did. Apparently, I did. we had fairly positive, a lot of positive things. You really liked it. I liked it, and I think you liked it a little bit more than I did.
Yeah, I went back and rewatched the first one 2 days ago, and I remember liking the movie. I'm glad I did watch the first one because I feel like the second one, I feel like it was warranted in some ways. But yeah, I still enjoyed it the second time around after almost 5 years later from the original. But yeah, I had a good time watching the first one. But we're here to talk about the sequel. The Platform 2 is our foreign film of the month. It is also a Spanish film. Written and directed by Galder Gaztelu Urrutia. I think I said that right. I know Ernesto's sitting back. He's like, you got these names, right?
You got it. You did okay.
You got this. Okay, I'll take okay. He was the original director, actually. He was the original director of The Platform, and then this time around he came back to co-write as well as direct the sequel. It stars Melina Smith, Hovik Kechkurin, Natalia Tena, and Oscar Haynada. Boom.
Yeah. Look at that. Boom. You got it.
What would you rate that?
If I had to give you a card with a score out of 10, I think you would have got an 8, maybe an 8.5.
Oh, I'll take an 8.5. Yeah. I typically like 2s.
No, so you're never that low. You need to give yourself more credit.
Well, names are hard, and we definitely practiced before we started. But anyway, Yeah, there you go. If you're familiar with the show, you know pronouncing names is not my strong suit, but we try. I was gonna say forget the names. Ernesto was like, no, we have to at least try.
Yeah, you gotta at least try.
We have to at least try. So that's what that was. But yes, anyway, we're gonna be reviewing the Platform 2 a little bit later on the show. Before we get to that, we're going to be talking about our spoiler reviews. Since we missed last week, we're going to be still talking about our weekly reviews on Agatha All Along, as well as The Penguin. So we're going to be talking about Agatha All Along episodes 4 and 5, as well as The Penguin episode 3 and 4. But before that, we got a little bit of Whatcha Watchin. But before that, Ernesto, there's so much to talk about. So much to talk about. We're going to be talking about some entertainment news. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is Aaron Pierre. We had briefly mentioned him last week. It was almost like the tail end of one story that we were talking about, and it's come a rumor, but now it's official. Aaron Pierre, best known for playing Malcolm X in the limited series Genius, as well as the role of Caesar and Barry Jenkins' The Underground Railroad, which was on Amazon Prime, has officially been cast to play Jon Stewart / Green Lantern in the upcoming Lantern series at HBO. Pierre will star alongside Kyle Chandler, who was just cast as Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and we talked about this last week. So now we have our duo, Ernesto. We have our Hal Jordan and our Jon Stewart going into this new Lantern series. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm excited. I mean, everything about the show makes me more and more excited. I actually don't know Aaron Pierre. I've never seen any of his other projects. But I'm here for it. I think for many others, he's a very well known and obviously in these other iconic roles. But it'll be nice for me to come in to look at him as almost like an unknown, like because I haven't seen him. Just because I haven't seen him in anything else, I feel like I'll be able to better connect with him as Jon Stewart than as opposed to that's that guy from that other thing.
Yeah, and I had never seen Underground Railroad or Genius. I'm familiar with those two shows. I just never saw them. So for me, I think Aaron Pierre is more of an unknown as well as like he's an up and coming, star at this point. And so I'm looking forward to see what he has to put in the role of Jon Stewart. And also a lot of if I'm not mistaken, this is the first live action appearance of Jon Stewart. So a lot on his plate on making this character come to life. Yeah,
and there's some weird rhetoric online where people are like, oh, well, he's not dark enough, or I was like, just,
oh my God,
shut the fuck up, like, just please, like, Jesus, just get over it. Like, if he is well fit for the role, like, what is the difference of the shade of his skin? Like, how does that do you really think that would make that vast of a difference in who he will be as the character of Jon Stewart? More than likely not. Like.
Right. Yeah, and there was actually an interesting Variety article that I have not read, but I kind of bookmarked to read at a different time. And it was all about the toxicity of fandom. And it was talking about even going back to what happened with the Marvels, what's happening with Joker now, what happened with the Acolyte. And it's like these particular fan bases are somehow, when they disagree on something, they go too far. And they make it their mission to really just trash it for no reason whatsoever, just because they don't agree with a certain aspect of the show or the movie. And therefore, it gets negative connotations on a broader scale. And then it becomes like, oh, we're not going to renew this, or we're not going to give it another sequel because the fans deeply did not like it. When the reality is just a selected group that are using all their time and energy to put out their hate, when the vast majority feel like it was either okay or it was fine.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how we can have that much of a toxic fan base all across nerddom, but then when it comes to Deadpool and Wolverine, we're all up in arms and saying this is the best thing ever. Like I do agree that not everything can be amazing, but I see no room for no reason why we have to go out of our way to basically like murder a franchise or a character or an actor who is just doing their job and just like really like make their days hell.
I think a lot of that has to do with Sonic. And the only reason I say that is because the fan base literally changed the outcome of the movie. Because You know,
Yeah.
the original trailer, they trashed it so bad that they went back and did the animation. So how many others are out there looking to get their Sonic moment? So there's people out there who analyze all this anything that comes out, any kind of casting, any kind of trailer, or any kind of feedback that they feel like they can give that could alter the outcome of this thing. And then they could be going down in nerd history as the person who went down fighting to keep this character true. That's my that's what I think. There's some of that, and just I don't understand why fans think they have the right to demand change of shit that they've made no financial investment in. Yeah, you may know some lore, but I'm pretty sure what they should be doing, and I say this very openly, that like they should be having some sort of expert on these characters. There should be somebody on that team that has literally read every Green Lantern comic known to man, and is there is like supervised as an element of somebody to go to. Is like when we stray away from like the essence of the character, and like hopefully they're doing the work. And James Gunn, from things that I have seen, is very much a comic book person, so he's one to respect the lores of these characters, and I think we've seen that in throughout all his movies. Like he knows how to respect the material, and not even necessarily it being ones that he may be directly involved with. Thank you. Yeah, just with his projects and the projects that he's now connected to, like making sure that they stay true to the character. That's what I get from that, and I think we'll really see that with when Superman comes out next year.
Yeah, I hope James Gunn really makes a statement with Superman, and just tells all the haters to shut up.
Yeah,
and I know what I'm doing. Yeah, hopefully, because I have my full faith in James Gunn so far. Even I remember actually reading an article saying that it's been 2 years now since he was appointed, the co-CEO of DC Studios, and now we are 2 years later. We are now seeing it starting to come to fruition. All this build-up, all this like planning that had to go into building this universe that he wants to put out. And so far, everything we're seeing from the projects that they're selecting, the way they're doing it, the casting announcements, like I have not been like, ooh, I'm not sure about that one. Like it's just always just filled with intrigue. And so I think that we just need to give this a chance. This is clearly a brand new DC universe that they're building, and we are hopefully in for a great time. And if it's that successful, I think Marvel should be worried and start taking notes on like how we should be approaching new content. Marvel did have a resurgence with Deadpool and Wolverine, and they're having some great success over with Agatha All Along, so maybe they're also retooling. And if we can live in a world where we can both be excited to watch the newest Marvel movie and the newest DC movie, it's a win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it doesn't have to be a separate thing. It's not Marvel versus DC. We're just nerds looking to have a good time in the theater for 2 hours. That's what we want. That's all we want. But anyway, congratulations to Aaron Pierre for coming out. Like he is now he has all responsibility. He's bringing Jon Stewart to life. So I'm excited to see what he has to do with the character, and also what happens with this show. It's very interesting what they're doing with the Green Lantern Corps, making it like a true detective setting. Very intrigued.
I mean, and the like I have very high expectations for this show. I'm expecting like Game of Thrones level TV, especially since what we're seeing of what they've been putting out with the Penguin. Like the Penguin is the first DC Studios TV, kind of the first show that James Gunn has put his stamp of approval on, that is under his umbrella. It's an Elseworld project, like it's not part of the main canon, but it's still under the DC Studios. And if we see that the kind of level of production that they're putting out, I have nothing but high hopes for this.
Yeah, I would like to think that James Gunn probably not have a huge hand into the Penguin, but definitely some influences. I think that just to make that distinction. But if the Penguin is a precursor to what we can expect as far as television from DC, and then as well as if Creature Commandos is actually also really good, then I would, that again, very much excited to see coming into 2025 what we get from Superman and what moves forward with all the other products that are coming out. But again, with anything, time will tell. But there's nothing that's telling me that this isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for this. So
same here.
More good things coming out of DC Studios.
And I think we're leading into even more good news because after The Wild Robot's critical and financial success, director Chris Sanders announced in an interview that a sequel is already in development at DreamWorks Animation and he will return to write and direct. The Wild Robot is based on a trilogy of books from author Peter Brown, so it's safe to assume that the sequel will follow the events from the second book, titled The Wild Robot Escapes. No word yet if the original voice cast will return for the sequel. Well, I would sure hope so. Lupita Nyong'o's going to come back. I mean, The Wild Robot was a fantastic movie, and I think I read online somewhere that they finished the first one, but they left it open-ended to lead into the second one, whereas the first book is, as we read, it is a literal direct connection to they set up the second book at the end of the first book, whereas we get a vague notion of that at the end of the first movie in case they were not greenlit for a sequel. So I'm actually glad that they did that because this, it's always, these things are always a gamble. This is a brand new IP, but it's obvious that this is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think this movie kind of came out of nowhere. For people who love the book, maybe not so much for them, but for us, it's like, oh, this movie looks good just off of the concept and the trailer. And then, I didn't really think of it too much, mainly because the fact this was an unknown IP for the most part. It was, just a robot. It's kind of unknown what could come out of this movie. And then, you had Chris Sanders involved as well, who did Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. So, all of that coming together and then just being the surprise hit that I don't think anyone was expecting to be this good, this emotional, this rich, the beautiful animation that was put into, all the hard work that was put into this movie to make it something special. My only worry now is that if they can recapture that again, I feel like that's a hard thing that they are going to have to work with, was recapturing the magic of the first film into the second film, because as we've seen in other DreamWorks animated films, the sequels don't always live up to the original. But sometimes the sequel can be just as good. I remember really enjoying Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda 2, even How to Train Your Dragon 2, were all great sequels to the original. So hopefully they can continue that trend moving forward of we can make a successful sequel be just as emotional as the first one, if not better.
I agree, but the thing is, it can't be more of the same. We cannot and I think we've talked about this before, you can't recreate the original. You have to, it's got to find its own footing, but still honor what the first one gave us. You actually gave a good example. I actually like Shrek 2 more than Shrek 1.
Same.
Right? But we love the first one is amazing because it gave us a second one, and it has set up this vast universe which is expanded into so many different projects and properties. But there's just something, I felt like the first one was the introduction, and the second one where you really got your footing. And I'm hoping that we get that same vibe from this. I hope that the second one is not a carbon copy of the first one.
Yeah, and I will say they have a high bar to reach, though. I didn't feel this emotional coming out of, say, Shrek, but I think they were able to, what was the introduction of the Shrek universe in the first movie, they were able to successfully expand upon in the sequel.
Yeah.
So hopefully maybe this track goes on. Also, with the difference between How to Train Your Dragon and Shrek is that there's actually source material for The Wild Robot, so we can easily see or have an idea where the story goes if we just read the second book.
Yeah, but I'm not going to do that until the movie comes out. So.
Okay, because we just reviewed this movie last week, and I had asked you, would you go back and would you go back and read the sequels? And you said yes. Yeah. So now there's more of a reason to do that.
Oh, absolutely. But I feel like we already, based off how great the movie is. I've already seen it twice. I would 100% go see it in the theaters again. It's just a good. It is a movie that provides a good movie, just a good movie theater experience.
How was it the second time around?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was just as good. I was there's one part, the part in the middle where we're building up for Bright Bill to learn how to fly, and I got like just as choked up. Like, I'm here with all the kids, and they hadn't seen it, and Eli's like, I gotta go potty. He's like, I'm like, you're gonna have to wait until after this part is done, and then I'll go take you to the bathroom.
No, son, you're gonna wait because this is a beautiful moment.
It's like Daddy Pete, no pee. It's cry time.
I really want to see the movie again. I know that it was already announced that it's coming to video on demand very soon, which I think Universal should probably hold back because this movie's still doing really well. But also, what we talked about in the past, Universal probably wants to capitalize on the success. So if you weren't going to see it in the theater already, you probably were not, and might as well get while people are still talking about it, go put it out at home so people can buy it there.
Which is dumb because it's literally still in the top 5.
Yes, like it's number
two, I believe. Yeah, I think it was two, and Terrifier 3 was number 1.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different thing. That's the box office has been really interesting, which I think we'll dive into more next week when we talk about our film next week.
Yes,
but. Yeah, either way, I think this is fantastic news, The Wild Robot getting a sequel. I just hope that, they can capture the same spirit and expand upon the story. And I think I agree with you. Whenever the sequel comes out, I'll probably then venture to then read the second book to get an idea of where we're kind of heading. But I actually watched the movie first and then read the book. And I enjoyed how much of a experience that I had when I was watching the movie, not knowing the story, so I don't know if I even want to read the book until after the fact, like I did last time.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start doing that because then I end up comparing too much.
Yes, right, exactly. But yeah, either way, it's exciting, and also bigger news is that Chris Sanders is coming back to write and direct, which I think he is the glue to make this all together.
Yeah.
So I think his expertise on crafting a story is definitely warranted to come back for a sequel. And I just like to see how invested everyone was into making the first movie, that they're just excited to come back. And obviously when DreamWorks bought the rights to it, they're like, this could be potential for a trilogy. And now we can see that that's what they're most likely doing.
Yeah.
We'll see how the second one fares. But I think with all the critical acclaim that it's getting, and now it's being talked about for potentially an Oscar-nominated film, and has a good chance of winning too with some competition from Inside Out 2. That's gonna be tough.
That's gonna be a tough decision.
It'll be a very interesting conversation down the line when we potentially have to compare the two of like who or what will win. But anyway, exciting news that The Wild Robot is still going to be still sticking around. Moving on to I don't know. Moving on to some other news. I don't know how I feel about this. Paramount Pictures is developing a live-action / CGI hybrid feature-length film based on the Rugrats, the classic Nickelodeon cartoon that aired from 1991 to 2002. Jason Moore, the director behind Pitch Perfect, Sisters, and Shot Good Wedding, is on board to direct the film. Saturday Night Live actors and writers Mikey Day and Streeter Seidel will co-write the film with Rugrat creators Paul Germain, thank you. Yeah, you got it. You see, I had a good start, and here you see, I knew it was going to come back. Anyway, plot details are still unknown. I don't know how I feel about this, Ernesto.
Yeah, this seems kind of weird. Unless they're going like Rescue Rangers route. If they're trying to do what they did for Chip and Dale at Disney, like we're gonna get this hybrid, but it's gonna be more of a movie for the adults than it is for the kids, which is it's kind of interesting. It's always an interesting route. I don't know, especially if they're gonna go off that weird animation whatever, because they tried to bring the show back recently, didn't they?
They did. I think it was like in 2021. It's a Paramount Plus kind of reboot of sorts, but instead of using 2D animation, they went with 3D animation, and it looks very off.
Yeah.
From obviously the original cartoon, but it just doesn't. I feel like it doesn't fit with a 3D setting. So now we're going live action. I can only assume that if this is a live action CGI hybrid, then this is my assumption: the babies are going to be CG and the adults are going to be live action.
Yeah. Yeah, everything
And
else is going to be real except for the kids.
Right, and that feels weird to me.
Yeah.
That just feels so odd to me that that's the approach that they would go with. The idea just sounds like no one's asking for this.
No. Like, I used to love Rugrats as a kid, but, I mean, maybe we just need to leave it where it is. Like, we can wait. Like, what happened to the notion of, like, using other art to inspire more art? So why can't they just say, hey, we really love the Rugrats. Let's make something like the Rugrats. Like, why do we need to keep making the Rugrats?
Yeah, I'm looking at the photo now. Man, it looks... I don't like it. I think it canceled. No, it's still going. Wow, 46 episodes. Has a total of 2 seasons, with the latest being of March of this year was the last episode that aired so far. And it is not canceled, so they're still going strong with it. So maybe, here's also my thought. Maybe with the resurgence of the Rugrats, it's doing well enough to warrant a new film.
Sure. Then, yeah, it will be that animation or close to that animation style.
But it's live action. So, I don't know. The Rugrats is also of its time. It has 3 pretty good movies that I remember. It has the Rugrats movie, Rugrats and Parrots, and then Rugrats Go Wild when they did that crossover with the Wild Thornberrys.
Yeah.
So I think it's just of its time. It's the late 90s, early 2000s. Like that, it was popular in its heyday, and kids can still go back and watch it if parents feel nostalgic over it. Put it on for the kids, and I'm sure it will still land just as well for a younger audience. I just don't know if this is the avenue that this should be in. I would only imagine that this would probably fit better as an animated film for Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Rather than the idea, because I'm assuming this is going to be for theaters. I could be wrong, but they said Paramount Pictures, and that means that it's going to the theaters with this.
Feels like it should just be a streaming movie.
I agree with that. A very odd choice from Paramount. I would definitely need to see a trailer to kind of cement my thoughts on this, but so far, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I'm pretty sold on where I land on this. So I think a trailer will just solidify my decision.
Fair enough. All right. And also, sorry, one more thing. Sorry. The director, Jason Moore, doesn't seem like he has any history whatsoever of making a children's show. I mean, we're talking Pitch Perfect, Sisters, and Shotgun Wedding.
Yeah.
It's just like, this doesn't even make any sense to me. The fact that SNL writers, Mikey Day, who's still on SNL right now, has a hand in writing this. He was also responsible, and his Mikey Day and Streaker Sidell, they also had a hand in co-writing Home Sweet Home Alone, which was the awful sequel / reboot that was on Disney Plus. So I watched that movie, and it was a terrible movie. And so
that's a movie. See, but that's a movie. I think that's just for kids because my son Edward loves that movie.
Really?
Yeah, he thinks it's funny. It's a silly kids movie that's meant for kids.
And maybe that's the route that they're going. I don't know, but I just feel like stuff behind the scenes doesn't make any sense. The idea doesn't make any sense, and I'm not. This is kind of one of those decisions where, like, do we really need to exhaust this IP? To your point, let's try something else.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Here's some kind of exciting news. I'm kind of excited for this. A sequel to 2019's horror comedy Ready or Not is officially in the works. Samara Weaving is set to return to star in the film. Original directors Matt Bettelini-Oplin and Tyler Gillette, also known as Radio Silence, are returning to direct, as well as the original screenwriters Gary Busick and R. Christopher Murphy are writing the screenplay. I've really enjoyed the first one. I am curious on how the movie kind of warrants the second movie, especially if Samara Weaving is coming back. Like how do you gonna get wrapped up into that situation twice? It doesn't really play out for a sequel, so I'm kind of curious on what they're gonna do. But I really enjoyed the first one. This is one of their better films.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, I really enjoyed what Radio Silence has done with the Scream franchise, as well as Abigail that came out earlier this year. And this is kind of one of their first movies that really kind of brought them to gave a lot of people recognition of their style of work in horror and comedy. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I do find it kind of interesting that this is the project that they go back to after, working with this movie originally, then doing 2 Scream movies, then doing Abigail. And then they're like, you know what? We can go back to Ready or Not, and we have an idea for a sequel. So I found that interesting that is something that they want to explore, to continue to explore after working on these other properties years later. And but yeah, I really enjoyed the first movie. I do agree with you. I don't know if it warrants a sequel. The ending of that movie feels pretty finished, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
very definitive ending.
Yeah, exactly. Unless they're finding a creative way to continue the story, I don't see room for a sequel. But for the most part, it's a good standalone movie, and I'm open to what ideas they have for the sequel.
Same.
And the last bit of news we have for you guys this week is Henry Cavill is set to star in Amazon's live-action Voltron movie based on the popular 1980s animated series. Cavill's role is still unknown, but will be joined by Daniel Quinn Tui, a newcomer to the scene who reportedly impressed the filmmakers with his work as an understudy to Tom Holland and the West End production of Romeo and Juliet. Rawson Marshall Thurber, the director behind Red Notice, Skyscraper, Dodgeball, We're the Millers, and Central Intelligence, is set to direct the film from a script he wrote with newcomer Ellen Shaman. Though plot details are currently kept under wraps, the original animated series followed a group of space explorers whose vehicles, when combined, form the super robot known as Voltron. I think all of this is pretty exciting.
Oh, this is pretty exciting. I don't know if you remember, but my son and Edward and I, we actually watched the anime that Netflix did of this a couple years ago, and it's pretty good. It's got like 8 seasons, and it's pretty entertaining. So I'm on board for this. And Henry Cavill he's just a man of nerd content. Like he just jumps from, he really is. Like he's talking about doing Warhammer. I mean, he's freaking Superman. Like, well, I mean, he does some The Witcher, exactly. The Witcher, like he did a cameo as Wolverine. Like, yeah, he fully engulfs himself into this nerd content, and like he's all about it. So I'm if he's in, I'm in. I trust him.
Yeah, I feel like the only thing that I'm not 100% sold on is the director.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like he's had a string of hit or misses. I love his comedy work. Like, I love Dodgeball, and I love We're the Millers. I thought Central Intelligence was okay. Skyscraper was a pretty solid action movie starring Dwayne Johnson. And then I did not like Red Notice. That was with Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot. It wasn't my favorite. So I believe that he's still working on a Red Notice 2. As well. So, like, I feel like he's a hit or miss when it comes to as a director, but the idea, and also this is kind of out of his wheelhouse a little bit. Like, this feels like a big budget production. Then he's, a big action movie. Then maybe the only thing that came close was probably Skyscraper. So I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of action comedy type of situation that's going on.
Yeah, I could see that. And I mean, not for nothing, he's taken on that's a huge IP to take on.
It is definitely a huge IP. Definitely one that, for the most part, everything else has been original content, either by different writers and or him himself. So, like, seems like the first time he's taking on a known IP this big. Through your experience, who do you think Henry Cavill could play? Like, what do you think his role would be?
I don't remember the names, but I would assume he would play the leader, the main lead.
So these are people that. Because I know nothing about this franchise.
Think of Voltron as like Power Rangers.
Oh, I see.
That's a crude way of determining it. There are obviously vast differences, but they each come together and they're one part of the thing. They operate their own machines, and then they come together to make like this super robot.
I got you. Okay. All right. So then, that makes sense. Then he can be the leader. I thought maybe he could have been like a voice of something. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
No, Voltron is not the person. Voltron is like the Megazord thing.
Got it. Okay. All right. Then yeah, I think he can definitely. I mean, he's a known leader in most movies. So
yeah, he's Superman.
He's Superman. So yeah, I think this could work. I'm curious to see what other member. How many members of this is 5? Probably. If I think about Power Rangers, you got.
It's either I think it's 5.
5. Okay. So I wonder who's going to be rounding out his crew. I guess that's going to be coming later down the line of who's going to fill out the rest of his crew. But to your point, Henry Cavill's just the man of the nerds. Like he's like, I'm willing to do anything. I don't care, and he will probably invest all of his time and energy into making sure that it becomes the best nerd thing that he can come up with, because like he was a good Superman. I liked him as Superman.
So did I.
And a lot of people loved him as The Witcher before he left. So I have no doubt that all the energy that he's putting into those shows, he will put into this movie, as well as Warhammer whenever that comes out.
Yes.
Also from Amazon as well.
Yeah, he's all in on Amazon.
Yeah, he really is. They're giving him all the money, and he's like, I'll take it.
I'll take it.
I'll take your money. But there you go. That's all the news we have for you guys this week. As always, you can see all the latest and breaking news on our social media channels, on Facebook at Box Office Bingers, and our Instagram and Threads page at Box Office Bingers. We'll post all the news over there first, and they'll come back in the show, and we'll talk about it. So with that, we're going to be moving over to a fun segment we like to call What You Watchin'. It's been a minute since we've done this. So Ernesto, we'll start with you. What have you been watching?
So the wife and I actually started a new show. We were watching Interview with a Vampire. So the first season is on Netflix, and then I believe seasons 2 and 3 are on AMC Plus. It is surprisingly good. This has been recommended by a few people. One of them was Liz. Another one was actually Russell. He's a director where I work, and he was like, this is a man of very few words, and he was like, you got to watch this show. I was like, okay, if you say it, I'm gonna take you up on it. So it's Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire, or simply just Interview with an Vampire. It's like a gothic horror TV show. There was a movie that was the same name in the 90s, I believe. I never saw it. Isn't that the one with Tom Cruise, I believe?
Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and Kristen Dunst. I've never seen it myself, but yeah.
So apparently in Anne Rice's work, there's a lot of queer elements that were apparently left out of the film, where the film more or less insinuates it, but the TV show really just kind of fully adapts the written work and kind of explores all of that. And I think the show's pretty good. It's interesting how they use this Lestat. There's Lestat and Louis and Lestat. So Lestat is like the main vampire, and he converts Louis. And it's interesting how he like Lestat ingrains himself into his life, and like not just initially attacks, but like slowly latches onto him like a parasite. And like I will say, for me, the writing is so poetic and beautiful. Like it's interesting just to even you can just listen to it and listen to it's narrated by the main lead, Jacob Anderson, who plays Louis, and he's narrating his experience about becoming a vampire, and it's just the way that he puts it is just so beautifully done. It really is, but it's also like incredibly grotesque. Like there are some like fight scenes where like this guy, there's one fight scene that's in a church, and like you literally see the main vampire Lestat, he like punches a priest in the face, but punches a hole through his face, and just blood and shit explodes everywhere out after. It's interesting. It's pretty good.
That sounds comical in a way.
Like it sounds comical, but in the moment it was actually really, really intense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about this show. Like I've heard nothing but good things about it. I never went out to go watch it, mainly because it was on AMC Plus, so I don't really have a good means of watching it. But yeah, I did notice that it was coming into Netflix. So I'm sure a lot of people are now, like yourself, just rediscovering it. I am looking here that the first 2 seasons are out now. Looks like the second season just wrapped up this past June, and the third season is coming in 2025.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's good. I'm excited to see when the second season. I'll probably just wait till it drops on Netflix, and then I'll just watch them on there. There's no reason to rush. We can just find something else to watch.
There's always something to watch.
Yeah. Let's see. So moving right along, we saw the Max original Salem's Lot. This is like the third iteration of this movie that's been made of Stephen King's book. It was pretty good. It wasn't bad. It was good for where it was at as like a streaming Max original. I think it fits perfectly into there. I think it probably would not have been as good if this was a movie that went to the theaters. Like it fit perfectly as a streaming movie, just like kind of like a movie to watch at home. It's got some pretty decent jump scares. Some of the fight scenes that they kind of lay out are really well done. So it's entertaining. I was entertained all the way through. Like, I wasn't bored.
I want to look up the Rotten Tomato score because I think I saw people like trashing this movie.
Yeah,
so
I mean, but what do you expect? It's a streaming Max original. Like
That's fair.
Like I had low expectations, and this is something that I could watch in the background.
And what made you want to watch this? Have you seen the other movies?
I have not. Hannah wanted to watch it, so.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
She wanted to watch it, so I said, "Sure,
let's put it on."
That's what you want to watch. Let's go.
It's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. The Rotten Tomato score is 45% critics, 40 audience. So that's not like too bad. It's not like great, but I expected like a much lower number than that. So
yeah, it was semi-entertaining. I felt like the ending was a little rushed. Like there was a lot of build up, and then it just the moment just kind of happened, and it's like, all right, here we go. All right, end of the movie now. It was just like a 1, 2, 3, like just like 5 seconds. Like they did the thing, and then like 5 seconds later, credits are rolling. It's like, all right, we can move on with our life. Goodbye. That was the end of the movie.
What I find interesting, I had no idea. I'm just rediscovering this now. The original Salem's Lot was in 1979 and was reviewed quite favorably, 89% critics, 65 audience. And then in 1987, it received a sequel, A Return to Salem's Lot. And then in 2004, received another iteration that was 3 hours and 12 minutes long, starring Rob Lowe and Andre Brewer and Donald Sutherland. Interesting. And that received critics 69% and audience 49%.
That one's probably. I bet if I had to guess, that one's probably the closest, maybe a closer adaptation to the book. Otherwise, why the hell is it 3.5 hours long?
3 hours? That's fair. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, 3 hours. How long was the original? The original was
hour and
an
change.
Hour and 52 minutes. Yeah, an hour. Yeah, it's not 3 hours.
No.
And then this one was just under 2 hours. So yeah, interesting. I know nothing about Salem's Lot, so I am interested to see that they 20 years later decide to reboot this franchise yet again. So, and you said it was okay.
It was fine. It was good.
Okay.
I was entertained. So.
And that's what I feel like. That's like the low bar that we can achieve. Was I entertained? Yes. And it was all right.
And Matt, I have a surprise for you.
Oh, I can't wait.
So, during our hurricane coverage, I was able to sit down and watch a movie that you have literally been begging me for years to watch, and I'm here to tell you that it happened. I finally watched Don't Breathe.
I can't breathe right now. All right, I'm ready for it. All right, tell me.
I have to tell you, I loved it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really good. One of my favorites is when they're kind of under the house and he's chasing them and he just cuts off the lights and the whole scene is all in like this infrared or like the night. It's like all in night vision. Oh, it was so good. And man, what is that guy's name? The guy who plays the blind guy.
Wow, I had it, and it's gone. He was from.
Dylan, no, not him.
He was from Avatar. He's the main villain from the Avatar film.
Stephen Lang. He was so good, and actually, I could have sworn that the guy, one of the main leads, was Logan Lerman. But it's not.
Logan Lerman.
It's
no.
It's the guy from 13 Reasons Why.
Yes.
Dylan Minetti. Dylan Christopher Minetti. But yeah, I was surprised at how much I liked it. I felt like the ending was kind of a little. Once again, I felt like the ending was a little rushed, but I felt like it was. I mean, And the guy died. Like what the fuck? Like, he went through all that trouble to help her. He should have just left. He should have just left and left her to figure herself out. It's like, I told you to leave. I'm pretty sure I told you to leave. I would have liked to there have been. I think the only thing I would have changed. I wish there was a group of 4, so that instead of seeing the one guy die that gruesome death, I feel like I wish we could have gotten like one more person, and like for Stephen Lang to like disarm and like to completely take apart. But I guess that's what the other character was for. Although I kind of would have liked for him to live.
So
the girl, she lives, the main lead, but the guy, the Dylan Minetti character.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, he was just doing the most to try to save her life.
He was.
And then he just got blasted. Like, literally puts the key in the door, gets ready to open the door, let's go, and gets blasted away. It's like, damn, all that for nothing.
and it's funny because a lot of the moments in the movie, they alluded to he had died already.
Yes.
And so they've done a couple of fake outs before that moment, and then eventually finally killing him off, which is kind of heartbreaking because he was like the more pure one out of the 3. And but yeah, there was a moment in that movie when you learn about the woman downstairs.
Oh wow, yeah, that was a nice little twist. I did not see that, how the setup on that one. Did not see that coming.
And then we learn more, and you're like, oh my god, like this movie took a different turn than you were expecting.
Yes,
and also because you were already invested into the situation that was already happening, let alone an added element to this that you really weren't expecting. And it's unfortunate that they made a sequel to this, and it has a different director. I don't think Fede Alvarez was even involved in this movie, maybe in a producer setting, but he wasn't even, he says that he had a hand in writing it. It says written by, but it also says based on characters created by. So I don't know if he actually wrote it, if they're just giving him writing credit because he made the characters from the first movie. But either way, I just remember not enjoying the sequel as much. Definitely, it's a different director. And yeah, the sequel just doesn't hold up to the first movie. And it was almost like they were giving him, like Stephen Lang's character as the blind man, like a redemption arc. And I feel like in some ways, based off the first movie, that character does not deserve a redemption at all. So they went along this line of like, oh, he was such a great character in the first movie, we're just gonna let him be like a John Wick character in the second one.
Really?
And it turns like this action crime movie then. It was not even a horror, and the first one wasn't really a horror either. I more consider it as like a thriller. So if the first one was a thriller, the second one was more like an action crime story,
So I'm looking here at the poster for the second movie, and there's this little girl. So given on the facts on how we know that he doesn't have any children in the first one,
right,
and what he does to obtain a child, or at least his attempt, do they explore that in the second movie? Do they talk about that?
Just to put some clarity, this is a girl that he finds.
Okay.
Okay. Just put that out there. But I think some of his past comes back to haunt him, so they give him more of a backstory, and I feel like none of that is warranted. I do not care about any of that, so I just pretend that the second movie doesn't exist and just watch the first one again.
I guess I can see it. I can see his character going that route only because they don't make him outright evil. They just make him like almost like a vigilante. Like, are you gonna break into my house because I'm a blind man? Well, I'm gonna murder you.
Yeah, which honestly, everything was justifiable until we learned what's happening downstairs.
Yeah, everything was fine until we got downstairs. See, but do they talk about that? Is that addressed at all in the second movie?
From what I remember, it's not.
See, well, then that's a problem, because that's a huge plot point from the first movie. Yeah. It's like, you can be this character, but we need to address this big-ass elephant in the room about this crazy shit that you used to do to women.
Yeah, and I feel like that they, like, again, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, but it was kind of along the lines of, like, I used to have a daughter, and then that's it. Not really going over what he used to do to the women downstairs. So yeah, all of that not great. And so I don't feel like that story was kind of where it needed to go for the sequel. So I was a little bit disappointed with it. And but yeah, I mean, Stephen Lang came back. He got a paycheck, so good for him, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's how I felt about it. It's like, oh, this one was successful enough. Let's just do a cheap sequel to it. And we've got back Stephen Lang, so that's all we really need.
I guess that's true.
But I'm so happy you watched it because I love this movie so much. And again, you can kind of see like some of the precursor things that Fede Alvarez was doing in this movie that he kind of brought into Alien Romulus.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I really enjoy his style. It's like I'm curious to go back and kind of rewatch more of his work.
Yeah, the way he treats suspense is incredible.
Yeah,
like
it's different.
Like
it's very unique.
It's very different, and it's so engaging. I think that's why I love it so much.
Yes.
It's like you are just as like invested into what's going on in that house when people are trying to escape the situation, as well as what's happening in space when they're trying to escape from an alien. Like you're like that level of like you are locked into this setting. I think plays both very well in both films.
I agree 100%. Other than that, I'm done. You actually didn't, and you didn't tell me what order you wanted things, so I'm gonna wait for you to tell me which one you want first.
All right, we're gonna start with Thelma.
Okay.
So Thelma was a fun movie that I saw was getting a lot of attention during the festival runs. It was like premiered at a certain film festival, I don't remember, and it looked like a really fun time. It follows a 93-year-old woman named Thelma Post, who gets duped by a phone scammer pretending to be her grandson, and she ends up sending them $10,000 to the scammer. And then from there, it's now her mission. She sets out on a treacherous quest across the city to reclaim what was taken from her. And it is so funny. I just imagine an action movie, but starring a 93-year-old woman. And it it plays as if it is an action moment for a 93-year-old woman.
Okay.
So like there's like a car chase, but with the wheelchair. There's like an intense like moment where she's trying to access the computer and the music is following as if it was an action movie, but she's just trying to navigate simple things on a computer, and it is so funny to see that. And like just the determination that she has to be like, I got scammed, and people are just saying, well, at least you're safe, and she's like, no, I want my money back.
Yeah.
And then she goes out on a quest to find the scammer to go get her money back. It is so funny. It's available on Hoopla right now, and I recommend anyone going to watch it. And also, it stars June Squibb, who is, from my understanding, and I think I remember reading this, now the oldest actress to star in a movie.
Oh.
I believe she was born in 29, so she's about to be 95 years old. And
that's incredible.
So at the time, say it again. No, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
okay.
I can.
I was just saying that it's incredible for her to have made it that far.
Yes, and also acting.
Yes.
Like still acting because at this point it would be probably 93 when this movie was made as well. So when she was 93, just leading, and she killed it. And I know I looked at her IMDb, and she does a lot of voice work as like the older grandma characters, and she's been like in one episodes of certain TV shows and stuff like that. But like to at age 93 to star in her own movie and just absolutely crush it, it was just a fun time to watch. This is one of the hurricane watches that we had, and it was just like a fun time to just watch her navigate the city on a wheelchair and like just being nefarious about it. Kind of, and she was also like, there's one point where like they were tracking her off of her like help alert situation, and like she just like tosses it so her family can't find her because they know that she wasn't going to get any help from them. It's actually really sweet in some moments as well. This was a well put together movie given the subject matter of it all. So I recommend anyone to watch it. It was really fun to watch. There was also, during the hurricane, we were able to start and complete two different shows. The first one being Nobody Wants This, starring Adam Brody and Kristen Bell. And this was the talk, Ernesto. You said that you can't.
Everybody keeps talking about this damn show.
And I'm here to say it was funny. It's good. It's a good show. It's the reason why people are talking about it. Megan heard about it and she said, "Oh, we should watch this." And I said, "Sure, why not? I like Kristen Bell, I like Adam Brody." And sure enough, it is. It's really. It feels genuine, but also really funny. Like everything just doesn't feel like it's forced. The romance feels right. The comedy feels right. I definitely get the vibe of like Shrinking and Ted Lasso.
Oh,
it's not as heartwarming as those two shows, but even I'm not sure if you ever watched Platonic with Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did watch it actually.
It's more like that as well. Like this show very much feels like it should have been on Apple TV Plus.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it's like the chemistry is right, the vibes are right, the comedy is solid, and it's like it was like 10 episodes, easy breezy. Like we finished it within we started like half of it one day and we finished the other half the next day, and they're 30-minute episodes, breezy watch, and it was entertaining from start to finish. And Netflix very quickly renewed it for a season 2, so there's more to come. And so if anyone's looking for a good rom-com, this is the show. I recommend it. And the last show that we watched was, oh my God, Presumed Innocent.
Yeah.
Did you watch this show?
Yeah, I talked about it. Did I not? I'm pretty sure I did.
I don't remember you talking about this.
I'm pretty sure I did, but yes,
Okay.
I watched it. It was great. I loved it.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It was funny because now when we finished that, what else we're gonna watch? And honestly, I was like, we like crime dramas. We should watch this one. Mainly because I didn't want to pick something else to watch in 2 hours. I was like, I don't got anything else that kind of fits the bill right now. But what about this court drama? We like court dramas.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I put this on, so I know there was 8 hours of entertainment I didn't have to worry about for the next couple of hours and the next couple of days. And we binged right through this.
Yeah, it was so
We
good.
binged so good. I'm so glad because this was a week to week for Apple TV Plus, and all the episodes were out by the time we got to it. But yeah, this court drama. So Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing in this show. And I think from start to finish, it just had you guessing. It created good conversation up until the very end, where I was like, I don't know, I'm still thinking it's this, still thinking it's that situation. And then we find out what actually happens, and I was satisfied with the ending. What do you think about the ending of it all?
I was really surprised. Did you guess the ending?
I guessed. It's hard to say without. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't watched it, but there was an aspect of where I thought two things, and I was half right on one of them, and then the show was going down. I was like, oh, I was also right, and then they gave us another twist, and I was like, oh, okay, then I was wrong. So I was like, I would say maybe like a weird way of kind of analyzing this, like 33% right.
So I think I was right along with the TV show. So I had the same assumption as Jake Gyllenhaal's character. So when that was revealed at the end, I thought what he thought. So
yes, okay, same.
So when we got his reveal, when he was calling that person out, I was like, yeah, you get him. That I know. I was right there with you. And then you learn that it's not that thing, and you go, oh damn,
right.
All right, I didn't know shit. They got me.
Yeah, they got me. Yeah, and that's honestly that's a good mystery.
Yes,
that's a good court drama. Right, you were invested into the court case, but you're also invested into the characters. And so when you can like get us go along this journey, and we're making our own theories, and you still don't know who it is, but it also tricked you, as well as you're like satisfyingly surprised, and it's like, oh, this also makes sense because there were clues there we just didn't pick up on. That's a good drama. That's a good mystery. And so I was happy to go along this journey. And Jake Gyllenhaal really killed it. Apple TV Plus has renewed this show for a second season, but a lot of people are theorizing that it's going to be now an anthology series. So the next season is going to follow another group of people in another court drama setting.
Ooh, okay. Because this one was based off of a book.
Yes, I think you're right. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. So I don't know what other material they have going into a second season, but I honestly thought the way that they were going to go at one point. I thought there was a moment where they weren't gonna tell us the true story. And because I knew before going into this was already in for a second season. So I thought when we were getting toward the end, I was like, okay, so we found out the verdict, and now the second season is going to follow this other path. But clearly they wrapped it up. They wrapped everything up at the end of that episode, at the end of the season.
Which I'm perfectly okay with. Like, I would much prefer this to be an anthology season. I guess that's a better way, because it's not really the episode. Like, it's not per episode, it's per season.
Yeah, it's per season. Yeah. So it's kind of like an American Horror Story situation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But with the exception of Jake Gyllenhaal isn't coming back, so it's not like we're bringing back the same actors.
I'd be okay with that too, though. I think I'd be fine with that.
If he came back to play that character or another character.
Well, if they had their actors, like their core group of actors, and then they just changed their characters the next season.
Oh, I see.
That way you can kind of see the same actors kind of play different roles. You kind of get a little bit better idea of their range. I mean, but Jake Gyllenhaal's a big actor, so it would be hard. I think it would be hard to tie him into something serial like that.
Yeah. So now let me rephrase. This is more like a True Detective situation.
Yes.
Where each season. There you go. Yeah. So instead of it's a detective story each season, this is just a court drama each season.
Yeah.
So, anyway, great show. We found some great things to watch during the hurricane while we were forced to bunker down. So with that, now we're going to be diving into our weekly reviews. And so since we skipped last week, we're going to be talking about episode 4 and 5 of Agatha All Along. And let's start with episode 4, titled If I Can't Reach You, Let My Song Teach You, directed by Rachel Goldberg. And this is actually a lyric that was not in the original ballad that we heard in episode 2. This was a new lyric that was added for this particular episode, because we later found out this was a newer rendition, a popular rendition within this universe of the ballad. But before I dive into like kind of the breakdown, Ernesto, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I like this episode. I mean, we get everybody blaming each other for Mrs. Hart's death. I mean, overall, I think it's just a fun show to kind of just that I'm casually watching. But I do like I feel like it's setting us up for it in the MCU as in total. It's showing us that we can get these singular stories, like these, like not, it doesn't have to be the main storyline, but we're able to get these little mini episodes along the MCU timeline.
Yeah, and also, again, I love that we're still having fun with the idea of, like, as WandaVision was, like, playing along the tropes of classic television eras, I feel like we are doing the same thing, but kind of like a horror / spooky / witches parody that we're kind of going along. Actually, the last episode, or episode 3, wasn't really like that, because they had, like, this Desperate Housewives look to it. This one was like a more, what is it, like 80s?
It's like
70s recording studio look vibe. So we're still kind of going down eras in a way, just, in a different setting. So at the beginning of the episode, we actually found out that Mrs. Hart is actually dead. I wasn't sure if that was going to be a thing or not. Like, I wasn't sure if they're going to actually commit to that.
I agree. I thought, like, maybe she would come back and, like, just somewhere along the road, but no, she did.
No, she is dead. And then because she's dead, they decided to summon another Green Witch, which when they did their whole kind of funny, like, ritual and they try to brewing up somebody new, they got Rio Vidal, a.k.a. Aubrey Plaza, who then when she sprouts out, she claims that she is the Green Witch. And, and then I thought it was kind of funny. They also called her a scary bitch, which I wasn't expecting them to say that line. But yeah, I just find it interesting that she is now classifying herself. She's like, I'm not a Green Witch, I'm the Green Witch. Yeah. And you saw that Agatha was not really, and obviously excited to see her yet again. Later in that episode, we see that she's like, you came early, which is a lot of interesting conversations that, like, what they were talking about and what plan they could be conjuring that could be coming in effect later in the season. So once the Aubrey Plaza comes into play, they go into the next trial. It's under the waxing moon phase, the fire phase, what they're calling it. They enter this 1970s recording studio. And we can also see that during that scene, they're kind of looking around the room. They're seeing different paintings across the wall of like different ways that witches have died. We also see the Alice's mother kind of go about the we see her accomplishments displayed on the wall as well. And we also see Alice kind of do like this. They do this in movies all the time where like her face is shown in the reflection of like a painting, and you see like the connections she's trying to make with her mother. But also within all the time, we see Agatha and Rio clearly that have a history. They pointed to a face that they pointed to the fact that they were lover, and appears to have come to a truce until they get to the end of the road. So we don't really know exactly why they're coming a truce. We know that they were Rio was trying to kill her, but we're not sure.
She was waiting till Agatha got her power. I think that was the deal that they had. Like, once you get your power, then we can have this battle.
And yeah, and so then I guess because she said she came early, and so but now they're coming with a truce to make sure that I guess she's coming to her full power. But she also made a line too. She's like, "I'm also here to collect my bodies." So that's also something interesting that has nothing to do with Agatha, to my understanding. So I wonder what that also implies. Also, kind of relating to their history, Rio late on the episode explained that she had to do something she didn't want to do that led to having her to hurt someone that she loved because it was her job, and that is also alluding to that she had to hurt Agatha, something she didn't want to do in order just because she had to do something because it was her job. And technically Agatha is Rio's scar. So obviously we see there's a large history at play between Agatha and Rio that I wonder if we're going to be seeing that explored in later episodes. But they have a few banters back and forth. Then as part of the trial, they realized that they had to play Lana's ballad. That was the way that this was kind of Alice's trial, and this is like her redemption. We also realized that their family has a generational curse. And we also find out, which is really, really cool, is that the Lana's ballad, which is Alice's mother, is a protection spell for Alice, and they have to play it to get rid of the curse. And they said that the only reason why that the ballad or the protection spell has always been in effect is because somewhere around the world, someone's always playing that version of the song because of how popular it was. And I find it in a way that's really beautiful when you think about it. It's like, before her mother died, and then they claimed that she committed suicide, that she was able to do this protection spell for her daughter to not be affected by the curse, and developing this massive song that she ends up despising. Like maybe one of the reasons why she was never with her mother. And now that was the whole thing that was protecting her the whole time. That version of the song was meant to protect her, and she never realized it. And I thought that was a really kind of a beautiful message to put in an episode like this.
Well, yeah, because she spent most of the time in previous episodes almost like damning her mother, like, like blaming her for not being there and not being a part of her life, when really she made the ultimate sacrifice to just keep her daughter safe.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy to think about. And also, I love we're seeing these in these multiple episodes, how the ballad is such a strong storytelling tool throughout this entire season. And we see that in the next episode too, and we're going to talk about in a minute. But like, I just love how the lyrics are the title of the episodes, and like these small phrases in the lyrics have so much meaning to it. You can really tell they took the time to make sure the song was the baseline of the season. And I don't think I've seen that happen too often in many shows, that like so much detail is going into a song like that. So when you go back and listen to it, you can even like, the whole season's right there in the song the whole time. We just didn't know about it, which is kind of cool to think about. So then they play a rock rendition of the ballad, which sounded really cool. I really like that rendition of the song. And then we see this crazy looking demon out of this flying out there. I was like, what is that? And correct me if I'm wrong, Ernesto, does that look like one of the scariest things you've seen in MCU projects so far?
I mean, it's pretty scary. Scarier than anything you saw in like Multiverse of Madness, when you would expect to see some gothic and scary shit.
Yeah. I was not prepared for that, especially like, oh, there's the curse, and they just pan over to
This winged demon thing. It's on top. It's like, oh, hey, what's going on? What are you doing there?
Oh my god, that's so freaky looking. And then like you see her, like the demon latches onto her shoulders, and like they were showing the scars earlier, and then like she just belts out the lyrics of the song, and then it just bursts into flames. And you're like, oh my god, I don't know, that was intense to me. I wasn't expecting to see that creature look like that. And I was like, good for you. This is, again, really surprised by that. They ended up breaking the curse. Teen gets hurt, and Jennifer was able to heal him. Agatha is now at Teen's bedside. And then I thought this was interesting. When Teen awakes, asked if she cast a signal. So when Teen awakes, he asks her if she had cast a sigil, and Agatha said she wouldn't know because it works on the witch who cast it as well. Agatha then explains that a sigil are destroyed, not lifted, and can only be destroyed when they are no longer needed. And so I thought that was an interesting backstory that obviously we will later find out in episode 5.
Yeah.
To I guess was no longer needed at that moment. But I just found an interesting backstory to see that like the mystery of who Teen was still lingering throughout this episode, and like you can tell that he's even like, who am I? And it's like, oh, don't worry about it. Like you are you. Don't worry about anything else. But even she can't even determine who she is or he is. At the end of the day, so then Teen asked Agatha about Agatha's son, and she quickly ignored the question. The episode ended with Rio telling Agatha that the boy isn't hers, and Agatha walks away, and that is the end of the episode. So I think overall a pretty solid episode.
Absolutely, and I think now seeing episode 5, I think it was a great lead-in to set up what happens at the end of episode 5.
Yes, yeah, especially how they ended episode 4. I will say that as much as I like the rock rendition of the ballad, I feel like that the trial itself felt rather quickly, like it was almost an afterthought, not an afterthought, but like I felt like that particular trial was like not that long within the episode, and they were focusing on the stuff after the trial to build the characters' backstories. Like they were all sitting around the fire as well, kind of going over like their different scars that they've had, and so I feel like that was the more important part of the episode, and the trial was just like, this is something we have to do because that's the what's the word? The pattern, the structure of what this episode is.
Yeah.
Each episode is a trial.
Actually, I agree with you, and I actually feel that way about the episodes 4 trial and episodes 5 trial. It just felt like they were over very quickly.
Yes, it was like start over like these. It definitely felt like these episodes were not about the trial, and they're about the everything that happened before and after the trial. Mm-hmm. Anything else about? Oh, sorry. And with that, we're seeing some rumors that suggest that Rio is actually Mistress Death. This has not been confirmed, but there are a lot of cues that were in episode 5 as well as episode 4, as well as like collecting bodies, the way that Rio has been acting at certain moments that everyone was scared. I mean, you can see that as like kind of like psychotic in a way, but a lot of rumors are suggesting that Rio is a personification. No, that's not. What's the right word? She's a representation of death.
Yeah.
And so she is death in a way. So I'm curious to see if they're willing to explore that, and if that rumor holds any true. Anything else besides with episode 4?
Nope.
No. All right. Now we move on to episode 5, titled "Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power," and I found it really interesting that in the beginning of the episode they faded in on "Darkest Hour," and they let that linger for a little bit, and then they fade in "Wake Thy Power." And given the context of this episode, it's a perfect title.
Absolutely.
And again, looking at the lyrics, that fits not only the episode but the whole song in general. Like I just love this aspect of the show so far. Also directed by Rachel Goldberg, so she definitely had directing multiple episodes, but definitely a episode 4, 5, 1, 2 punch there. And to your point, the setup that was in episode 4 was coming to play at episode 5. So with that, we see the Salem 7 enter the Witch's Road from the same spot Rio was brought up basically leaving the door for them to enter. There was a couple of rumors to see if that was intentional or not, that Rio purposely left the door open for the Salem 7 to come into the Witch's Road.
Oh, probably.
I believe that theory 100%. In order to escape, they conjure up some brooms, but they were doing so begrudgingly because apparently brooms have been co-opted by the Holiday Industrial
Complex.
Thank you. Industrial complex as an absurd emblem of our culture, and in other words, saying that they're basic. And so I find it kind of interesting in this world, we don't want to do brooms. We're not flying on brooms because it's something that the kind of like the Holiday kind of made up that they don't do, or they over, selling it now, and now it's kind of a gimmick that they don't want to do. They're above the brooms. Yeah. But as Teen suggested, well, you want to escape, and they're like, okay, we got to use the brooms then. And then we got this really great shot of them flying over the moon. So if you can just show that shot real quick. I really like this shot. I think this is a great moment in there. Just like, I think to me, this was just fun. Like, I wasn't expecting them to fly over like a moon like this, but like the whole idea is witches. We're having fun with this idea, and I think this is a beautiful shot to have in the show.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you get this beautiful wide landscape of all the witches flying over, very, very Halloween-like. It's given Hocus Pocus vibes almost. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a cool shot to include into the episode.
Yeah, and so then, and also this is the moment that they're having a good time too. It's like, oh, it's been, what was her name? I don't have it written down. She is the older witch, and she said that she hasn't done this in centuries, and so you can tell that this is like a fun thing they used to do, but over the generations it becomes less common to do this. So like you can tell that they're having a good time with it, and I think it was a fun scene just to explore as well as they're trying to escape from the Salem 7. So with that, we get a great shot flying over the moon. They ended up crash landing. One of the Salem 7 comes back and gets to them. They kind of shoo her away, and they run into a nearby cabin to start their next trial, which has a very 80s summer campground horror vibe, very cabin in the woods feeling. A lot of 80s memorabilia was shown all over the place. To start the trial, they Ouija board kind of just pops into place so they can start. Agatha pretends to be possessed by Mrs. Hart. What's the word? She was pretending to be Mrs. Hart and pretending that she was possessed by her. Yeah. Kind of that Mrs. Hart was the one that was communicating with them. They later found out that, like, which is kind of funny, which I wonder if this will come back again, that Mrs. Hart never referred to herself as Mrs. Hart, but as more as Sharon Davis. Mm-hmm. So that was like the key to be like, she's just fucking with us. And one of the rules that the teen described when talking about the Ouija board was that we should not, make fun of the dead. Yeah.
Or take your hands off, or there was like a bunch of rules.
There was a bunch of rules that I think every one of them was broken by the end of this. So after that, for real this time, the Ouija board starts doing a thing. They realize that Death was communicating with the witches and wanted to punish Agatha. The Coven then plot to maybe kill Agatha, who eventually becomes possessed. We shortly found out that Evanora Harkness of the Salemites, which is Agatha's mother, who was the one that was possessing Agatha, appears in a ghostly form and demands that the witches finish the Witch's Road without Agatha as a form of punishment. And I feel like it's kind of interesting that we see her character, like her mother, kind of come into play in all of this, kind of stopping Agatha. And this line is kind of probably the more shocking lines in the show to me, and like one that kind of takes a step back, and almost in a way you kind of feel sympathy for Agatha. When Agatha asks her mother why she still hates her after all this time, her mother says, "You were born evil, and I ought to have killed you the moment you left my body." I was like, to hear that from your own mother, shit, man. Like,
it's kind of rough. Now it's like, well, we guess we kind of understand why you are the way that you are.
Kind of, in a way, but also we saw this in WandaVision, how she portrayed her mother's coven, or the coven that she was a part of, and took all of their powers. and that's also the Salem 7 that's coming back to kind of punish her as well. So with that, Evanora possesses Agatha again. Alice then steps in and uses her power toward Agatha to save her, but once Evanora leaves her body, Agatha takes advantage of an opportunity and starts sucking the power out of Alice, technically draining her powers and ultimately killing her. And there was a breakdown video that I saw kind of explaining that Agatha at one point was saying that was an accident, I didn't mean to do it, but you can see it in the scene that she, like, her mother was out of her body, and then you can see her hands kind of pulling toward her, like she's like now sucking in the power. So this was not, and the theory is that this was not by accident. This was intentional.
Oh, I agree. Like, as soon as once she got it, I mean, because even when she walks outside and she starts to use what little bit of power she has now, you can tell that she's loving it, but also, and you feel like when she gets her power, like it actually makes her evil. I felt like she was a different person at the end of the episode. Look at the way she was talking to the teen at the end of the episode when she mentions that you're just like your mother. Like just her whole vibe and her, like, just the way she was saying things. It felt like Agatha, like WandaVision evil Agatha. That's what I was getting out of it.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it too, because there definitely was a huge shift to that. And also it just felt like there was no remorse for Alice's death when they got back into the Witch's Road. Not only that, it's like, well, this is just, part of the trials. Not everyone's going to make it out alive. And also, even the other two witches that came out of it as well said the same sentiment as well. There's like, she knew what she was going to do when she came in here. And they were almost like defending. It's like, well, we can't save everybody. And that we can see really pissed off Teen. But before that, in order for Agatha to stop draining all the power, I think it was too late at that point. We saw that through the Ouija board, Teen sees that Nicholas Scratch was trying to communicate with her mother and telling her to stop, I'm assuming, draining the powers out of her, but also stop killing people. So another sign that we're getting clues of maybe what happened to her son, Nicholas Scratch. But also, I think one of the biggest things here that I didn't really pick up on when I was watching the episode was that the fact that Teen was able to say Nicholas Scratch was the determining factor for Agatha to know that Teen was not her son, because Teen was unable to say his own identity. So when Teen was able to say Nicholas Scratch, she knew instantly that Teen was not her son. And when we later find out, when she was like, I know who you are. Now I can officially confirm I know who you are. You're just like your mother. And though the episode didn't reveal who Teen was, it's actually funny that at the time of this recording, Marvel put out a back half of the trailer. They came out with a trailer kind of featuring the last 4 episodes of the season, and they say the name Billy Kaplan in the tagline.
Oh, okay.
So if it wasn't 100% confirmed in the show, but through social media, Marvel did confirm that as Billy Kaplan, aka Wiccan, that is who Teen is. And the fact that rage that was able to build up within Teen was able to kind of push through and display his powers. Let's see here. The fact. Okay, so the witches acted the trial. Agatha was has a bit of a power, and then remembers that Teen is now Wanda's son, Wiccan, aka Billy Kaplan. Wiccan, out of rage, controls the other witches to throw Agatha and then the witches themselves into this mud pit and submerge them into the ground. So I'm curious where that goes. But now the big ending was it's revealed on who Teen was, and it's, again, Wicked, and it's Wanda's son. So I'm now very curious to see if we're going to get a flashback episode of how Wiccan got to this point of the show. I feel like this would be a good moment for them to have a flashback episode in episode 6.
Maybe we'll get to learn who Nicholas Scratch is. I actually just did a quick search online. Apparently he's some kind of supervillain, like big within the MCU itself. He's a supervillain appearing in comic books by Marvel, the son of Agatha Harkness. He's a warlock and a father of the Salem's 7, and predominantly a foe of the Fantastic Four. Yeah.
Do you think they're gonna show his character by the end of this?
I don't think so. I wouldn't hope so. Or maybe we should allude to who he is. That's probably would be better.
Well, Nicholas Scratch is a child so far, like
that
a dead child
that we know of.
That is true. That we know of. It is assumed that Nicholas Scratch is Agatha's son, who she sacrificed in order to get to the Darkhold. So we have only heard him in a child's voice. We don't know exactly who he is. But the big thing was that Wiccan is now is here as Wanda's son, and now I'm assuming going to play our hero into this otherwise villainous storyline. So I wonder where he plays into all this and where this goes from here.
I mean, because why did he just throw all the witches? Well, those 3 witches and not Rio in that little mud thing.
Yeah, it was funny that you mentioned because Rio never left the cabin. He is still attending to Alice's dead body, which again, further theorizing that she could be Mistress Death herself, kind of attending to the body that she wants. So it's curious to see where this goes. I like that they did not linger to the final episode on who Teen was. Yeah. I like that we have 4 episodes left to explore his now character. But I'm excited. I thought this episode was a little bit better than episode 4. I think I enjoyed this one a little bit better. Also, it was like a tight 25 minutes. It was really, really short. So,
which I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with.
Yeah, but overall, what do you think? What are you expecting for the last couple of episodes?
I'm kind of expecting more of the same. It's gonna be like overall, generally like pretty good, overall entertaining, and then like we're gonna get little hints of what the next thing is, of who this person is. Like maybe we'll learn who the teen is, but maybe the next twist is learning who Rio really is. And then maybe one of the final reveals is us learning who Nicholas Scratch is, because why are we spending so much time in this season learning who this person is if we're not going to eventually meet him? Like what if he ends up being like the actual villain of the season? Right.
And also I'm going to assume, here's my theory as well, I think Wiccan wanted to go to the Witch's Road because once you get to the end, you get what you want, and maybe he wants his mom back from the dead, and maybe this is the way to bring her back into the MCU after she died in Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, that's a good one.
And we can maybe see a cameo from Scarlet Witch by the end of it. Who knows?
Maybe.
But all right, so a lot of exciting more things to come with Agatha All Along. I'm really enjoying this show, but now we're going to move over to a different vibe. This is a different kind of television that we are experiencing. Let's talk about The Penguin, episode 3.
All right. So The Penguin, episode 3, titled Bliss, directed by Craig Sobel, written by Noel Valdivia. So this is basically a Victor's episode. Yes. We're seeing, we're initially thrown into a flashback where we see the seawall explosion from his point of view and where he was. We get a glimpse of his happy family life, pretty much polar opposite of what he's doing now. Like he was living a pretty straight and narrow life, going to school, doing his thing, has 2 loving parents. And then we literally see the seawall just completely take his whole life away. And we're introduced to his girlfriend, which I think her name was Gabriella, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
She's present in the flashbacks, and then and when we go back to the present, when Oz and Sophia go out for the evening, he calls her to spend the night for her. But in this moment, we get Sophia. She introduces Oz to the new drug that was used on the inmates at Arkham, and Oz just names it Bliss. They make a pitch. The whole thing is they want to make a pitch to the Triads, but in order to do that, they have to include Johnny Vitti. And in order to do that, they have to include Luca Falcone's wife, who Johnny Vitti's having an affair with. And so Oz and Sophia set this up, and I thought it was just a really well played out scene where they tell her they need her, she sets it up, she calls Johnny, they're up in the room, and then Sophia and Oz just walk in and basically literally catch him with his pants down, and then so sly, Sophia just looks at her and goes, "Don't forget your panties." I thought it was a great.
They know what's up.
I thought it was just such a great moment. But they use that to blackmail Johnny because the Triads don't want to take on this drug without hearing from one of the Falcone's underbosses, at least Johnny Vitti, that that they are in line with this plan, and they're obviously blackmailing him because they're trying to do this behind the family's back. They get the okay. They get the drug to the triads. We get this moment in the club where, Victor is the bag man and he's helping out. But it's also interesting because we're getting this back and forth where we're looking at his flashback and we're trying to understand like where he is. He's trying to find his place. If this meeting back up with Gabriella, if this is really the life that he wanted, that he wants for himself. And we're seeing that he has PTSD from the actual from the seawall explosion, and that kind of comes to a head in this club where he's handing out the drugs and the girls are giving him money, and then in this moment he realizes that he'd rather leave because his girlfriend is trying to leave she wants to leave Gotham and start a new life, and she offered for him to go with her, but he's kind of at this moment he's kind of torn, and this moment that he has makes him feel like that he should leave. And then we get this blowout between him and Oz in the bathroom, which I thought was a really beautifully constructed scene, just because
really powerful scene.
Like because he he tells him, he's like, I'm giving you everything. Like you could truly see that he sees him as like a son figure, and that he just and that what they're doing like is obviously is morally, ethically in question, but like to him he feels like he's doing the right thing by them, him, excuse me. And he's
and also like they had a conversation like at a dinner, like they were having lunch together, and they was explaining like what his family was like, and so they were able to connect that way as well.
Yes.
And then also it was revealed that Oz was Sophia's driver.
Yes.
And that's how he got his start up into like this world. And I feel like Oz is now treating Victor as like, well, you start as my driver, and then we can move up from there.
Yeah, and then we'll see where it can go from there. But I thought it was interesting that he tells him, he's like, he basically lays out his idea for the world is that it's not life isn't fair. Your dad busted his ass his whole life and has nothing to show for it, and he lived a good life, whereas we do things that are not that great, but yet I'm able to provide. And he goes, because in that scene he's telling him, he's like, well, my parents had never really got a chance to eat at nice restaurants like this, and Oz was telling him that's a shame, and that's because that's the way the world is set up. Regardless if it's right or if it's fair, the world just is. There is no fair. I just think that it's just beautifully constructed. So they have this blowout. He leaves. He basically says he's going to leave. He steals Oz's car. He goes to the bus depot, and then he gets there, but he's seeing his old life about to get on the bus, he sees that he can drive away and really dive headfirst into this life. And I think in that moment he realized that Oz was right, that he wasn't forcing him, that he was telling him, he's like, it's so hard because you feel like you have this gun against your head when I've shown you nothing but like love and appreciation. He goes, but this gun, this trapped gun to your head feeling is all you feel. When in actuality, he was right. Because then he sees her on the bus. He sees the moment where he can go and live this old life with Gabriella and have this picture perfect life away from Gotham, away from this life. But he chooses to not. He turns around, he drives back. And then I really love how at the end they put him in a situation where he has to double down on that decision, because he drives up and he sees him in trouble, and instead of like running away with his car, which he easily could have done and like just waited for them to kill him, no, he wins and he saves Oz and drives away with Oz. So I think for me this episode was the solidification of him being Oz's partner. It's him dealing with the emotional ties he had to his past and what was coming to fruition with his future.
Yeah, this, to your point, this is a very beautifully constructed episode, because we really got to feel for Victor at the very beginning of this episode. We saw that he had this connection with his family and he loves his family, and he was just going out hanging out with his friends on a rooftop, and his girlfriend, all of a sudden the seawall comes in and he literally sees his family's and his home from the apartment building get destroyed. and then you can tell that he lost his family, and you are instantly now feeling for him in that moment. And then you see his past kind of come back into play. You see what his future looked like, his past with his girlfriend, the future with Oz, and then like all coming down to that moment where he decides, do I want to go here or here? And then you kind of like, you feel for him both ways, no matter what decision he goes for. And then it's almost like a sad reality. It's like, no, I want to make a name for myself, and this is the avenue I want to do with, and I have to do this with Oz. And then he doubles down, like you said, and decides to save him at the end of the day. And I thought that was just a very great character-driven episode that you can understand everybody on all fronts, especially coming from Oz and Victor, and see at the end of the day, like, these are decisions that have to be made. This is just great storytelling and great character storytelling that was displayed in this episode.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And then it ends with he hops in the car, and then literally Victor asks him, what about Sophia? He says, fuck her, leave her. It's actually what he says. And that's
Which is kind of shocking to hear that up until the next episode.
I think in this moment, without the context of what happens literally moments before, which we see in the beginning of episode 4, it doesn't make sense. It seems very like jarring. Like, oh shit, like why the fuck would he say that? Like, damn, like she's like there.
Like literally, they were just having a nice conversation outside of the alley. Obviously, right before the Maronis come into play, but like they were connecting. They were like trusting one another.
Yes.
And then we can see, obviously, right at the beginning of episode 5, you're like, oh, I get it now.
4, but yes.
Yeah, sorry, episode 4. Yeah.
Do you have anything for this episode? What else? What are your notes? No, nothing. Okay.
No. I mean, it's pretty much. I pretty much went over everything. I just thought this was a great character-driven episode, really highlighting on Victor's story. For a show that's called The Penguin, we could have easily just continued to focus on Oz, but yet we are taking the time to focus on the other characters that I'm enjoying a lot more than what I expected.
Absolutely. And we see that come again in the next episode in Saint Annie, directed by Helen Shaver, written by Josh McCutcheon. So this is Miss Falcone's episode. And I would arguably say that this is easily my favorite episode so far. Like every week, I feel like every episode is better and better. But this one just really, I feel like it's really set the bar really high. Like it's just so well done. So we're thrown right back into that moment where the Maronis have Oz and Sophia at gunpoint. But instead of seeing it from Victor's point of view, we're seeing it from Oz and Sophia's point of view. And Sophia, in this moment, learns that Oz killed her brother, and that he has, and she doesn't even have the full details, but she has notions that he is working with the Maronis in some fact, and he is involved. Not only is he involved, but he is the one who actually killed her brother. So then the car comes, runs over their guy. Sophia gets a shot by her head, and then we see her disoriented, and then she makes a call to who we see is Julian Rush, who at this moment we don't know who it is. Later we find out it's her one of her therapists from Arkham. But then
that we saw in earlier episodes too. I
don't
know if we had a name for that.
Maybe
we saw his character, I believe, 2 episodes ago. But I don't know if we knew his name.
Oh,
we know his name.
You're right. Yes, you're right. And so we see her call him, but then we get thrown right back into a flashback and I really love the way that they set this up artistically, just production-wise, we're using the cinematography and just the production design and actually the lighting. Because in the beginning of the episode where Sophia is what's the word I want to use? Innocent, I guess, is the word I kind of want to use.
That's fair.
Where it's very light colors, very super bright. She's at this event about mental health where she's supporting because her mom is suspected to, they see that she committed suicide by hanging. She's confronted by this reporter and suspects that Carmine, her father, of being the hangman, the serial killer who strangles women and hangs them, because her mother died from the same thing when she was a kid. So afterwards, she meets with the reporter privately, but when they're getting ready to leave, Oz kind of mentions to her, like, hey, you shouldn't be meeting reporters. And Sophia says, hey, Oz, maybe you should shut the fuck up and drive my car.
And honestly, we've heard rumblings of this interaction in prior episodes, and now we get to see all of this kind of play out in a linear fashion.
Yes.
Also, before the flashback, I do want to make a note that Oz was defending himself to the Maronis.
Yes,
Like, literally,
that's right.
You remember that?
Yes.
He was like saying like, hey, Nadia Moroni was telling Sophia, was like, hey, he killed your brother. He's like, what are you talking about? I would never do that. You know, I was with you guys, and like kind of just already kind of just leaving Sophia Falcone on the wave side, and then all of a sudden Victor comes in with the car and kind of saves that situation. But Sophia saw all that, so like she saw how quickly he was able to turn on a dime to save his ass, and yeah, that didn't look good for Oz, obviously, in that moment. But anyway.
So Oz alerts Carmine, he retaliates, and then in response to that, he frames Sophia for all the murders and has her committed to Arkham Asylum. Obviously, Alberto and Oz were upset. I think Alberto was arguably more upset than Oz because he's the one who set her up. And they say that he set her up, but it doesn't really seem like he set her up. It just seems like he told her what, like he did his job. He told Carmine he paid him. Like, if she does some shit that you need to let me, like this, that you need to let me know. And he just let her. At least that was what they showcased to us, that he let her know.
I got that vibe. Yes, I got that vibe too, that he was like, hey, your dad pays me to drive you around. And he said, if anything's fishy going on, let him know. And I feel like he thought of it, nothing of it. It's like, hey, your daughter was talking to a reporter, probably nothing serious, but just letting you know. I feel like that's like the conversation I would have had. And then obviously, he took that very seriously. Also, Carmine Falcone is now played by Mark Strong. He was recast from the Batman.
That's right. But I mean, it was fine. I
fine.
Like, you barely notice he's got his sunglasses on. You can barely notice who he is.
Yeah, he's all good.
So what was really interesting is seeing all these moments in Arkham. Like, we spent, very dark. So now we get the shift. It's very dark. All the shots are very close, very, very claustrophobic. So she was initially only supposed to be there for 6 months, but Carmine got the judge to keep her there for over 10 years. So she's being mocked by the inmates, and then Dr. Ventress and Julian Rush, until he quit, were subjecting her to electroshock shock therapy. He realizes she's innocent and she quits, and then we later find out that he actually helped Alberto get her out. So she has this breakdown and she murders her friend and cellmate Magpie, who I eventually found out that later that Magpie is a villain, is a DC villain. This was like the real world version of her. So that was kind of a cool way to kind of include that within the show itself, like getting little hints of things from the DC universe. I mean, we're never going to see her again because Sophia literally bashed her brains in and she's dead. She's dead.
Also, like, it was, I feel like that moment right there, and I think they even explained it in the like behind the Gotham or inside Gotham breakdown, where like that was her turning point.
Yep.
Like, she was claiming her innocence this entire time. She was treated unfairly. She'd been framed for everything she's doing. She's not supposed to be there at all. And then when she realized that the trial was not going to happen and she was going to be stuck in stuck in Arkham for more than 6 months, she just went off and like killed her supposedly best friend. Because she accused her of working with the doctors to kind of keep an eye on her, and then she just bashes her head against the wall, the table, and was like, "I'm innocent." And then we later found out that was like 10 years of she's been in there.
But what I think is really interesting is that it also showcased the how ruthless and fucking vicious that she can be, like that.
Yes.
That. I mean, even from what she did to Oz to what she did to Magpie, and then ultimately, so once she kills Magpie, we're thrown back into the present, where she's with Dr. Rush, she's in the safety of his house, and then she has this realization about all these people who have lied to her in her life, and like Oz killing her brother was literally, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Absolutely. And also to that line there, I kind of wrote it down. I thought it was a great line. It said, for 10 years, men lied to me. Then I come home and it's all the same. I think they think I'm broken. I'm not broken. I'm not the one who is sick, and neither are you. The world is. So blaming the world, kind of what you're talking about last episode, the world is the one that's unfair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and we're just living in it. And I think that's a really powerful line. It's like, you're not sick, I'm not sick, the world is sick, and we're just trying to navigate through this. So I thought that was really interesting to make that distinction in this episode.
And I think once she has this epiphany, we see her come out like to this dinner party, and she's like, like all dolled up. She's got this yellow green dress. Her hair's kind of crazy. Her makeup's like, and I was watching the Inside the Gotham. They were saying how they did her makeup to almost look like a mask because this is her, and it's totally true. Like she was coming into her own. Like she was just very playful and like very confident, very sure of herself. I mean, leading up to her, you know, playing at the dinner table with the little girl and her building this connection with her, and having the little girl goes to bed and she has it out with everybody about all the wrongdoings that they ever did to her. And then everybody goes to bed. And as soon as she grabbed that little girl, I told my wife, I go, oh, she's about to kill everybody in that house.
That's so funny. You thought that because I wasn't thinking that at all. I was actually quite surprised what actually ended up happening. I thought she was just going to take the little girl with her as she starts her new life.
No, I think that she was but I think in connection of what she did to Magpie and what she's done to Oz and just the level of scorn that she had against these people, like as soon as I saw her grab her, I go, oh, they're about to come. I didn't think that she was going to gas them. I thought maybe she was going to hire some goons and shoot everybody up. But this is probably the cleaner way. And then, you know, we see
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, she has this time with this little girl in the greenhouse where she tells her that she shouldn't talk to her because she does horrible things, and she admits to accepting this darker side of herself and like coming in really like embracing the darkness that's within her, that was accumulated within her time in Gotham, that this is the monster that they created. And now they all because they all condemned her there, and they basically when they did that, they condemned themselves to die. But she left Johnny Vitti alive. She cracked his window because obviously she still needs to use him. I think my guess is she wants to use him for the distribution of bliss for the drug.
Which, I mean, what a way to cap off the episode. Which is just
fantastic.
From start to
fantastic storytelling.
This is peak storytelling right here. Like when I finished this episode, which was a few hours before we started recording this podcast, I was like, this, just because of this episode, this might be one of my favorite shows of the year so far.
Absolutely. Just from this, I 100% agree.
Just from this episode, I was like, wow, we are really going there with not only strong storytelling, but strong character-driven storytelling. I didn't feel this invested into an episode since I saw The Bear season 2 with Forks, where we were giving that good, clear, character-driven episode with I forgot his name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And so this was up top to down. This was Sophia's episode, and like at this moment, like you get it. You get her struggles. You understand her pain, and you know how we got here. And when you can convince the audience that, you've earned my respect. So very, very thrilled with this episode. I think it's by far one of the best episodes of television I've seen this year. So well done. 10 out of 10 for me on this one.
I mean, we're halfway through the season, and it feels like we're just getting ramped up. Like I'm all in.
Yeah, again, the fact that this show is called The Penguin, but we took Oz a step aside on this one.
Last two episodes.
Yeah. I mean, he was still involved in the last episode, but this one was purely for Sophia. Yeah. And 100% credit to the actress who plays her. I want to get the name right. Christine Milani. Christina
Milioti.
Milioti, yes. Fantastic performance in this episode.
She's so good. One of her strongest roles I've ever seen her in.
Absolutely. And we saw her transition from this, with your point, this innocent character all the way to now you can see how she got to this vindictive, revenge-filled, evil person because her family put her here. And now we see that whatever that they were, and this changed the game for the entire season too. Again, I love how this show is kind of keeping us on our toes on what Oz is going to do and how the story is going to play out, because now Sophia's in a different position and doesn't need Oz anymore. Also finding out that Oz killed her brother. Who knows where Oz is, because he was on top for just a brief moment, and now he is right back in the bottom, and I'm curious to see where he goes from here.
I mean, it's interesting to see how all these things played out with now Victor 100 like solidifying his position, being on his side,
Right.
and now Sophia 100% being antagonistic against. Like basically, she's gonna go after the Penguin, and the Falcone family is gone. So it's really just Sophia and Johnny, the Maronis, versus the Penguin. Like all three versus each other. So I think it maybe not the end of this season, but maybe somewhere along next season we're gonna see some kind of all-out gang war.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. What a great episode! I was like, for a show that I wasn't like. I had a different opinion on it. This show has been surprising me, with every episode.
It's met my expectation. Actually, I'm sorry. I take that back. It has exceeded. I already had high expectations, but it's exceeded my expectations so far.
Yeah, for me, same. It's definitely 100% exceeded my expectations.
But yeah, I'm excited to see how the rest of the season plays out. I think each episode just gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I 100% agree. All right, so with that, we're going to be diving in. We're done with all of our Whatcha Watchins, our breakdowns on our weekly binges. So now we're going to be diving into our spoiler review of our foreign film of the month, which is The Platform 2. So Ernesto, your thoughts on the sequel?
So I think before we dive in, I want you. Can you? So you watched the first one. Can you give a brief overview of the first movie?
So yes, I did end up rewatching the first movie. So the brief overview is the fact that we are now learning what the platform is. These people either are put in here or put themselves in here for a particular reason in this cell block area. And once a month, they are switched to different cells. And you have this plate of food that just comes down each and every day. And they have a few minutes to kind of indulge themselves into whatever they can eat within that surface of that platform that's just a bunch of food. The higher number you are on the cell block is, obviously the more options for food. Eventually, it comes down to there's no more food left. And if you're down by a certain number, you're not going to be eating. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people either commit suicide, resort to cannibalism, do horrendous acts to make sure that they can survive in their hell block or their cell block for the next month. And so we basically see our main character going to various floors, kind of understanding the rules and eventually wanting to break the cycle eventually they wanted to break the cycle that people down below should be getting food as well. And they want to send a message up to the top that the system is wrong and they should not be doing this. So they eventually go down the line of like being this messiah of the platform group and saving this one particular dish that they want to send back up. So like they was able to go all the way down and this one dish survived. And so they're like fighting people amongst the different levels, making sure that people were eating on the lower levels. And then once they got to the bottom, which was 333, we were also alluded to the fact that there was a child in here, and they were saying that no one under 16 should be in here. They eventually find a child. They realized that they gave the one food they were able to save. They gave it to the child, and they're like, the child is the message. The child is a sign of hope of a new generation. And then they send that up, and that's the end of the movie. Okay.
So, but how is the second one a prequel? I actually just read that now. Like, and I know you mentioned it, but how is this? I didn't see how that could be a sequel, because we get the loyalists, the whole loyalist and barbarian thing. Like, none of that was talked about in the first one, was it?
No, it wasn't. This was definitely a different hierarchy system that was happening before the events of the platform. We know it's a prequel because the characters that are in the sequel who have died in the first movie are now appearing in. Was it the old man? Was it the old man? I thought I recognized him. There were three characters that were displayed. There was the man with the rope, another man, and then the old man, and they were characters that had a bigger or smaller role in the first movie that came back for the second.
Ah, okay.
So that was like the determining factor. But also for half the movie, I didn't realize it was a prequel. And I think that was part of like the film's twists, so to speak, was the fact that this movie was a prequel, not following the events of the original film, which I think I honestly would have preferred it if it was a sequel, but because I don't think it being taking place before or after really meant anything at the end of the day. So
I mean, unless the whole reason is like because you're given this whole ideology with the loyalists and the barbarians, I think it's to show that like since the first one is like, well, let's try this thing and see what happens. Like in this one, it's like so many people have tried so many different things, but like the laws of the platform stays the way it is because people are greedy. Like, and we can't hold on forever because of the different uprisings and how people get disenfranchised by certain laws. Like, and I think that was something that this movie explored that I really like, where we have this Perma Puan when she starts by following the rules, and then when she gets her arm cut off, and then her friend gets tied to the platform to be eaten, and God knows what else happened to her. Like she becomes like the polar opposite. She becomes like the barbarian and leads this uprising. But I think overall, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was good. It's definitely. I actually thought it was better than I thought it was going to be. I think I expected a little less. I thought the dynamics they set up were interesting. We get some really gruesome depictions of violence. When we get the pretty much the all-out war between the barbarians and the loyalists, or when the blind guy, or what was his name?
Dagon Bobby.
Yeah, when he would come in and he would just basically be a judge and dole out justice, like whether somebody was going to be killed, whether somebody was going to be arm cut off, or whether somebody was going to be, tied to the bottom of the platform or tied to the top of the platform. I mean, it was pretty gruesome. There were some pretty gruesome moments in here.
I feel like the big thing that I didn't like this movie as much as I did the first one.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the biggest distinction here, I feel like the first movie had a very clear storyline. Mm-hmm. It was, definitely about hierarchy and like, society, the rich, the poor, the rich up top, the poor on the bottom, and how like the rich are just gorging themselves. But in actuality, if people were just to eat their own portions, then it would have made food all the way down to the bottom. But people are going to be greedy and do what they want, and eventually doesn't care about the people on the bottom because you're up top. And so like I think that was just a more streamlined storyline that we can follow. And I feel like this movie was kind of doing a whole bunch of things that really didn't make much sense when you're trying to put them together. The one through line that I was able to pick up on, also learning this was a prequel, that you can see that there was some sort of structure that was happening before the events of the first movie, because the first movie kind of established that like the people up top are going to eat what they want, and then the people are down below are going to try to survive until they go back up top, because each month we're going to be in a different cell block. And so you kind of luck of the draw on that one. But the second movie established that before that there was trying to be this system of fairness where we were only eating what we said that what our favorite food was, and they were willing to eat every day. And with that, it can go down. When they saw people interrupting with that law and that process, they called them the barbarians, and that's when there was a structure down that 2 floors above will go down and essentially kill the person who was not following the rules. And then there was a certain point in this movie where the loyalists were taking their own rules way too seriously, and even though people were trying to help others by breaking the rules a little bit, you weren't following the rules, and that's when they more or less became extremists. And then you can see the turn of our main character going from like understanding the law and being a loyalist and like this is fair and just, to like, oh, you're being way too extreme about this. I'm now going to be switching the sides to barbarian and want to kill you because your system is not fair anymore. Like you're taking this like you are worse than what being a barbarian is at this point.
See, I agree, but I think what interesting dynamic we get is we get this like this in this dystopian prison. We get the set of laws where we're trying to see some form of governance, and just to see, and I think we see that like set out where how people interpret laws and how they view them and what they view as fair. And I thought it was really interesting to see that played out in this fashion, because we're able to, I feel like we can draw some analogies with life of, you know, how people look at certain aspects, how certain people look at certain things, and how they choose to live their life in accordance to how that affects the people around them. Whereas we have these laws with the food and how that affects the people around them. So, well, you're not supposed to go down 3 floors down because you're going to break the chain of communication. But so how important is it to keep the chain of command? Like, well, you did that, and look, and then look what happened. It caused all this uproar and so many people to get hurt because you decided to break the law. But at the same time, like, what we're already in here in this fucked up situation. So as forms of punishment, you're going to dismember people and kill them. Like there must. But what else do they have? You're having people who are trying to survive to eat. So what other plans of actions can they put in place to make sure that they're gonna survive? I mean, we're talking about people's survival, where people on floors, I think they said like 150 or something below. It's
175
like, is
or something.
They're basically.
You broke up that last part. Say it again. No, I think we lost you.
You hear me? Check.
There we go. There we are.
Oh.
All right, say it again.
Just that, you know, they're damn it, lost my train of thought. Just that you know, that down there they're cannibals and shit, and that they're all eating each other, and that they're basically like non-humans.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what you resort to. So then when you are down below and the month restarts again and you're on a higher floor, you're more adept to then gorge yourself because you were deprived of any sort of food whatsoever because you were down so low. But then the problem with their law system is that each people who die, they bring in new people into this platform, this cell area, and you have to reintroduce the rules, but it might not be as easy for people above or below. And some people are starting out as basically having to kill their cellmate to resort to cannibalism, and all of a sudden they're on the top floor and they're like, now we have rules. I'm like, well, fuck your rules. What are you talking about? Like, I had to do all this down here as soon as I got here. And I think they made a really good distinction when she was talking to her cellmate, at least in the beginning of the movie, where it's like, well, you were lucky enough to learn the rules at a level 24. Some people don't even know the rules, and they're like at 175 or something. So there's just a lot of like going on in here. You can also see that this could be like their stance on how some people take religion, how some people take on our government, either what's law, what's fair, what's taken too far. And so I think they were taking over a lot. I just feel like they were kind of going over a lot of different things, and I think they're being vague on a lot of other aspects of it, where I feel like we could have just like really honed it in, like very similar to the first movie. And like, I think we should pick one message that we're trying to go off of and then explore that around this setting, rather than giving us like 2 or 3 of them. So then at that point I was really confused, and there were some moments where I just like felt like I was disconnecting from the film a little bit.
I could get that. So like we start the film. There's Zemitaian and Permapuan, I guess that's how you pronounce their names. They have their meals. He gets this pizza. She's got ham croquetas.
Pizza.
She's got ham croquetas. They're starting on 24, and then the guy on 23 is kind of like introducing them to the dynamics of the world and trying to like, hey, here's the laws. Here's what you do. Here's what you don't do. You know, he's a loyalist. He's showing them the food distribution. Then we see the tension escalate because this guy on 24, did they eat?
21.
On 21, ate all the toppings off his pizza. So they just left like the skin, and it leads to like what we first see is kind of the breakout between loyalists and barbarians. They want to fight to maintain the order. And then this guy who was so upset, he didn't even fight with them. He just sat there and watched them all like this massive battle like ensue. And then the only cool thing I thought is when they jumped, the people from the level above them, the guy jumps down. I guess one piece of food was left up there. So then they burn that woman alive, and then she lands on the pile.
That's right. So that's another aspect of it that maybe wasn't explained in the second movie as much. But if any food is left on the platform, they will either
Freeze.
like freeze them or kind of burn them alive. So like she didn't know that a piece of food was left up there, and then she ended up just burning.
Yeah, and then we end up seeing her body being, thrown all the way down, and then below we get hints. Which did we see this little hole cave area of below level 333? Did we see that in the first movie?
Yeah, I mean it was we saw that at the end of the first movie. We saw it a little bit more explored at the very end of throughout this movie. I feel like it's kind of like their depiction of death. I don't feel like people are actually living down there. I feel like that once you down there, you have died.
Yeah.
And this is their representation of some sort of purgatory or something. I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, and then we're getting kind of more of the same. They're on level 24, and then in the next month they go to 74. And I thought it was really interesting when they're talking to their new inmates, when they're reintroduced to their new area, is, they're like, oh, well, the anointed ones, which is the loyalist, what I would consider the loyalist police. And then,
Yes.
the main guy who I can't remember his name, he's the main one who doles out all the justice. And they go, oh, we're looking for this guy who was on this level, this one. And then we quickly learn that one of the people they're looking for is Zamatayan from 24, because he ate somebody else's food, because one of the rules is you're not supposed to eat the extras off of somebody else's plate. You're only supposed to eat yours and throw everything away. So they know that he did it, so they're looking for him. And we learn a little bit about his backstory, and then he ultimately decides to light himself on fire and fall down the pit and kill himself as a way of staying true to the laws, so that she doesn't have to be punished for what happens to him.
That's also a crazy system too, because they realize that people above are dead and they're not be able to eat their portion of it. So instead of eating it themselves, they're forced to throw it away so no one else have the temptation to indulge themselves in a particular food item that's not being used. But eventually, like they've said before, their chain of command is going to be broken at some point. So their laws that they are protecting can only go so far unless the chain of the line of communication is intact.
Yes.
Once that line of communication breaks, it's an all-out war on the food. And so their system is already broken. Their law is already not there, because not everyone's going to obey it, and you can only control so much of the rules and the platform before it becomes a free-for-all at whatever point.
Yeah.
And then the people who are honoring it down below, for example, are not the same people who are honoring it above, and they're just gorging themselves, and that's it. It's a very interesting idea that they presented here.
Yeah. And I was wrong. So when she gets removed the second time after this guy kills himself, she goes with an inmate called Sahabat on level 51. And this is a lady who's missing her arm. And she talks about her horrific experience that she's had with the Anointed Ones, which I don't remember exactly what the specifics were, but her other cellmate was alive.
We lost you again.
You lost me again. You got me?
There now you're back.
Okay. Well, we see her get what she talks about, how she lost her arm. She talks about how her cellmate was eaten, how she had to watch her cellmate get eaten alive. And then there's this outbreak with the barbarians, and they decide to break the law and go down more levels than they're supposed to so that they can help out. So then that's what leads to her friend being tied to the platform, and then her arm, Permapuan's arm, being severed off. Which they do in a very horrific fashion, where they make her. They let the platform just do all the work. They just put her arm down and let the platform come on and just chop it off. So then after this month, she's paired with the old man who is from the first movie, right?
From the first movie, yeah.
And it's interesting because her first cellmate was her being a loyalist, and I feel like her second roommate was her being an extreme loyalist, and then to see because she, and I feel like she was so disillusioned about being all in and wanting to help, is that when we get to the third guy where she becomes a barbarian, she becomes like the leader of the barbarians and leads this
She also
uprising.
lost her arm at that moment as well, as already.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when she gets to
Yeah.
this third guy, she is, she's one arm. She's, she's like, well, like if I'm all in, it didn't work. Like then I guess I just need to be a barbarian. And then so she becomes a barbarian and leads this, like goes down a bunch of levels to get a group of people to where they can eventually decide they're going to fight off. So then the loyalists come and they're in the level above them, and you hear all this clatter and stuff breaking, and they're all in the level above them telling them that they're going to throw away and take out all the food from that point down so that there's nothing there for them to eat. And then when they become weak, then they're going to come down there and kill them.
Yeah, and then they're saying that, well, isn't this against your law? Because you're now, making the other people down below suffer.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's a sacrifice you're going to have to make.
Yeah.
And then themselves going against the law that they've created for their own greater good.
Yep.
To the future to preserving the law.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, they basically tell them, "Oh, that's fine. You're going to do that. We're just going to go down and we're going to start eating your loyalists." And then we get this weird cannibalistic scene, and where the old man like falls in love with like one of these ladies, and they like have like this weird romance, all leading to this this fight, which is kind of weird setup, because then the platform comes down and there's all these cushions. It's like, this is like a Trojan horse situation, like, and then they just pop out, and then I like how they just pop out, and the Dagin Baba is just like in the middle, and he's just like, oh, like he's just they just push it all, and he just kind of like flows in there.
Like, are we surprised that you're behind the mattresses? Where else would you be?
Like, what did we think there's gonna be a cake there? Like, that's what did you think we thought was happening?
Like, you weren't fooling anybody. I'm sorry, it's just not happening.
And then we lead into this battle where the old man kills his boo. He accidentally stabs her. So
yeah,
it was kind of weird. It was kind of a weird, sad moment that they set up, like if we're supposed to feel bad for him. Like, oh, you killed your wife. Oh, didn't you just, or your girl? Like, didn't you just finish like eating a bunch of people? It's like nobody feels bad for you right now.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. So it leads into like this crazy battle where everybody's just killing everybody, and they kill the Dagin Baba, and then they throw him down the hole.
yeah, just push him down.
But then she, when she was with her second roommate, she tells her about this weird plan where if you ingest this chemical, that the gas that they put out doesn't affect you. So that's what she does. And then they gave us this illusion that they were in, this is what I thought, that they were in space, because like everybody's floating. It's like, where is this prison? And they never alluded to that. They just show you that people are floating in the air and that they're placing people down. And then
honestly, this was the first time we actually see this, because this was not explored in the first movie at all. And so this kind of gives some reason how the platform is even to operate.
Yeah.
And also this is a form of, like, they were able to control gravity at some point.
Yes.
So I found all that interesting as well. So the fact that they allude to the fact that they could be in space, I was like, okay, this makes this whole situation a lot more interesting.
Yeah. So then, she's hooked onto this pile of dead bodies, I would assume.
Yeah.
But then here's it, like, do we now, given what you said, do you think that she actually died and this is just some kind of like purgatory fever dream? Or actually, I'm sorry, not that point. So when she gets towards the end, she sees this little boy. We keep cutting back to this cut scene of like babies playing on a playground, and there's this one
children
kid,
playing,
and then there's this one kid who's taken by his parents. But then we see this one kid. He's at level 333, which I'm assuming the whole kid thing is a connection to the first movie, which I didn't remember. So she sees him. She tries to capture him or take him, but then she hits her head and starts bleeding out of her head.
Yeah, that whole scene was a little weird. But I think they were trying to replicate the same meaning that they had in the first movie, which I was kind of like not I didn't really buy into it the second time. It was more effective in the first movie where there was like, the children are our future. We need to preserve our children. This is like basically insinuating that the horrors of life is all within these platforms, but the kids are what's going to be our future, and we have to protect our children. And it was the same message that they had brought into the first movie, and they just reiterated that in the second movie yet again, but without the context that was delivered in the first movie. So I feel like it was kind of out of left field that like we did all this stuff in the second movie only to go back to this one point that wasn't really addressed in the second film, but was really addressed in the first film that really had nothing to do with the second movie, but we're going to do the same thing over again. And then they send the child up as a message of hope or something. And then they step off the platform and say, you're no longer needed here. And to me, like, I believe this is a form of purgatory, and they're able to, they are dead at this point, but they are kind of living on the ground floor of the platform. And then, we see that there has been a cycle playing out throughout these different iterations. More people have been, we can see like people and children have been, this cycle has happened once before. Again, we have some people realize and they find a kid that's particularly always on the 333rd floor, and they send them back up as a message of hope. And then the cycle continues again, where somebody else has this premonition that we can do better, goes out to the bottom floor, picks a child, sends it back up, and then we see that the ending of the first movie, and then we see all like those different like platforms kind of coming in and out as the credits are coming are happening, and then we see our main character from the first film do the same thing with the child. He steps off, and then you see them reconnect. So the main character from the first movie reconnects with the main character from the second movie, and we see that they are probably together in some sort of purgatory, like I've been theorizing. And another twist is that they actually knew each other, and people are assuming that is the boyfriend that she had mentioned in her backstory in the first, in the earlier in the film.
There's when I was reading some of the synopses online saying that was her fiance.
Yeah, so. And so like, great, there was a connection there. I feel like that kind of meant nothing, in my opinion.
It doesn't.
Who cares whether or not they were related or not? We're just trying to maybe connect the two movies together, but I feel like they did that kind of poorly. I'm also kind of surprised at the end of all this, we didn't really get more information about what's happening outside of this platform. Like, we got little glimpses in the first movie of, like, we see people in a kitchen preparing all this food, and they're paying extra close attention to the food and making sure it's nice and pretty, let alone to then bring it down this platform where it's just getting destroyed and not treated to the same care as people are preparing it. So I'm surprised that we didn't really get any more information that we learned from the first movie to kind of dive into what was going on outside the platform. So I figured if they're going to make a third one, maybe we can explore what's going on outside of the platform and how they see the outside looking into this whole thing, because in some cases this could be like a human experiment at how people react to certain situations, and so that could be a through line that we could be exploring. But again, we don't really know what's happening outside of the platform area.
That's true.
So I was hoping that when I started the second one we were going to explore that more, but obviously we did not. But overall, your final thoughts on the film, Ernesto?
I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was good. It was something different. I'm gonna give it. Let's go 3 stars.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I was gonna say 3. I think I think the movie started stronger than it finished.
Absolutely.
I think we like, it was a great start, and I feel like we kind of lost our way a little bit toward the end. Like, honestly, once the old man was introduced, like, oh my God, this is like a prequel setting, and she become like full barbarian. I feel like we started to lose our way a little bit on the messaging and the story, and it was kind of like falling apart toward the end there. But I thought we had a really good, strong start, and it's still an interesting world that they're building as well. So I think I'm still intrigued in the world building.
I'd watch the third one.
Yeah, I'd watch the third one.
I've invested already.
Yeah, yeah. At this point, right? It's kind of crazy because as you said, we forgot about this movie. I didn't even know they were making a second one until I saw the trailer a couple weeks ago. Like, I saw the trailer, you sent me the trailer, and I was like, yeah, who knew?
Yeah, look at that.
5 years later, they made a sequel. Same director coming back to do it. So I wonder if depending on the streaming numbers, if they do decide to make a third one, or if the original director is interested in making a third one. But it was good. It was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
It was. I don't think it was better than the first movie, but a solid sequel, because there are some sequels out there that are just horrible, and I don't think this was the case. I think this was like a solid attempt at continuing the story. Just doesn't reach the same highs as the first one.
Yeah, I agree.
So there you go. That's our spoiler review on the Platform 2. And that is all the show we have for you guys this week. Ernesto, tell our lovely listeners what they can look forward to next week.
All right, next week we are going to be reviewing The Joker, Folie à Deux. Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, directed by Todd Phillips. There's a lot of conversation behind this particular movie, and whether it's good or whether Todd Phillips is just trolling the audience, or if the point was to subvert expectations for this one. Like, there's a lot of divisiveness. But hopefully we're gonna have some special guests. We're gonna have a good conversation with this one, whether it's good or bad. I plan on having a good time.
Yes, I agree with you, because this has been, I feel like, one of the most divisive movies of the year. Of like people's expectations going into it, and then the reactions coming out of it. So we have both yet to see the movie, so I'm really interested in kind of watch the movie for my own thoughts, and then coming back into the show and kind of diving into it, because I feel like whether bad, good, or otherwise, I feel like we're gonna have a lot to talk about regardless.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
And one of the things that I found really interesting, kind of teeing up into next week, is that a lot of people didn't know it was a musical. So they were surprised when they walked in, like, what the hell is this? And I wonder if that's some of the reasons, some people, this is also controversy. And it's weird that people are saying that, because it's like, was that not known?
Yeah, I felt like it was pretty well known in the marketing and everything that this was going to be a musical.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't that well put out in the marketing, because a lot of people didn't know about it. So I just find that one interesting aspect about going into this movie, and we're going to be diving into more next week on it. So I'm really looking forward to see what you have to say about this movie. So yeah, this will be an interesting conversation. Not the conversation I thought we were going to have talking about a Joker sequel.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how next week turns out. But if you want more from us, you can always follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Threads and Instagram page at @box_office_bingers. The fun doesn't stop here. It continues on our social media channels. So be sure to follow any, if not all of them, to be up to date on everything that we're doing. And we have a lot of fun doing these, so we appreciate you coming. Really just kind of spending some time with us each and every week, just talk about movies and TV shows and latest news and what we've been watching and all the newest movies that are coming out. We're 236 episodes in. We're not tired of it. We're going to keep going as long as we can. So we appreciate you guys doing the same and kind of just listen to us just talk about movies and TV shows. Come back next week for more movie fun. You're not going to regret it. Thank you for everyone who comes out to listen to us. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Ben Ernesto Santos. See ya.